This is Conversations with Women in Sales, an award-winning podcast created by Barbara Giamanco, who hosted the first 67 episodes. Listen to interviews with amazing women about their journeys in their sales careers, often discussing sales leadership tips, ideas, and strategies. We aim to inspire women to consider a sales career and for some women to grow into sales leadership. Men, we appreciate your allyship. And now, your host, Lori Richardson.
Big shout out to our official sponsor, Reprise, the leading full funnel, product-led growth platform. With Reprise, your sales team creates, presents, and shares product demos, perfectly customized for each step of your sales motion. Go to getreprise.com/womenInSales to try for free today. I'm here today with best-selling author Helen Fanucci, who has written a book called Love Your Team, a survival guide for sales managers in a hybrid world. And Helen is also customer success sales leader at Microsoft, longtime Microsoft leader. Helen, it's wonderful to have you on. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Lori, for inviting me. So great to see you.
Yeah, and I have your book right here. It's getting all marked up.
Fantastic.
I am thrilled with the book because it's different. It's different than other leadership books. And I want to talk about that today. We know that, it's so expensive to lose talent, especially when there isn't strong leadership. And I've always felt, and I think I've seen statistics, that people leave managers, not companies. I don't know what you think about that. Anything you can do to build a better rapport and relationship with the members on your team has got to be such a smart thing to do. It's so worthy of your time. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. The real key is to treat your team members as whole people with lives and ambitions worthy of your attention, while simultaneously supporting job performance and career development. And the tables have turned as a result of COVID, and people have different expectations. They want flexibility, work-life balance, ability to take their kids to soccer games, whatever it is. And it behooves a manager to find out what matters to their team members personally, but also support them, remove friction, sales friction, etc., because they are the key to the manager's success, not actually the manager. The team amplifies and can do so much more than just an individual manager can.
Yeah. And so a manager really needs to be that champion for their sales team members, right? Help them look good, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces to it, actually. So that's a piece to it. And I expect my sellers to be able to do the whole job, and I support them. And actually, they are the ones that present the proposal and business case asking for discounts or investments in a deal to the senior leadership at Microsoft. And I'm in the background with my video off taking notes because I want them to, one, get visibility to the senior leaders, but two, they own the whole thing, and it gives them an opportunity to build skills and confidence. And then it enables us to debrief, and they can be present in the conversation because I'm taking notes and actions. And it's really, that's an example of empowering them and helping them look good and build the skill set while just pragmatically having them own the whole job of the sales pursuit. And I know some leaders might think differently and step in and want to have it be about them, but that's a core issue of why people leave.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, if you always are there to save them, it's not scalable, for one thing.
For sure.
And they don't learn. They know, oh, hell no, she'll bail me out if I have a problem.
Yeah. So there's an element of that for sure, that it's got to be about the seller being the performer. And then also having confidence, and I have the expectation that the sellers are getting higher up in their customers' organization and broader. So they also need to have the confidence to engage senior leaders at their customer and the skills to build trust and relationship with the customers.
Yeah. And what I really love about your book, and I'm stressing to people that I'm talking with, because I want everybody in leadership to read your book, by the way.
Ew.
Even you're very people centric, but it's not a woo. I mean, it's very organized. You have an engineering background, and
Right.
you have this organized into conversations. And so tell us a little bit about how you came up with that idea. And going through the chapters, I just realized what a great thing, because I feel like I could literally give this book to a new manager and they could go through it and maybe do some role plays and things like that, but they could learn very quickly the language. And it's not just, we'll do this and do that, but you're actually walking them through the language, and then it's just so different. And I think it's critical right now.
Thank you. Yeah. So, how I came about it to organize the book that way is when I reflected on what I actually do in my job, I realized it's a series of conversations with my team. And so I ended up using myself as a guinea pig, and I started writing down what are the conversations that I actually have, and how much time do I spend in each conversation. And then I organized it into and consolidated where I thought it made sense and try to reduce redundancies, and organized it into 17 conversations in 5 categories. So the first category is called conversations of connection. And that's all about getting to know your team and building trust and relationship and understanding what matters to your team members on their terms. Because if you don't have that relationship and foundation of trust, it's really hard to be effective. And I'm also modeling the behavior and the skills that I expect my sellers to have with the customers. So it's also pragmatic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the second set of conversations, so there's 5 conversations and conversations of connection. Then the second category is conversations of performance. And there's 4 conversations there. So it's really, first of all, setting outcome-based performance objectives. Like, I know some managers get nervous about, oh, I can't see my team. Are they productive and working? I don't actually care what they do on a day-to-day basis, because I have a system in one of the performance chapters of checkpointing how they're progressing against their goals, whether it's pipeline coverage, quota, their executive relationship map, and their customer. So there's a lot of dimensions, both hard numbers as well as softer, but yet critical performance expectations, including leading a strong cross-functional team, building a strong culture, et cetera. The third category, conversations of strategy. Fourth category, conversations of customer engagement. And the fifth category, conversations of internal alignment. Because in a large organization like Microsoft and B2B sales, I would say 50% of a seller's time is internally focused, mobilizing the team and the resources on behalf of the customer. And so that is no small thing, getting alignment across the company. And one of those chapters is about seeking investments for a customer proposal. I mentioned that a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
So those are the 5 categories, and it encompasses 17 chapters, and it's really intended to be a kind of a how-to manual. Like, you might think of a first aid book. You're rock climbing and a buddy has altitude sickness. You go to the chapter on altitude sickness. So, a sales manager can go, okay, want to support my team on strategy. And you might go to the team on strategizing and ideation with your seller on customer issues or challenges.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And coming from the Pacific Northwest, I've been around Microsoft for many years, and I wouldn't have expected a leader to write a book about loving a team, just because of over the years, there've been a different side, I think, that people would think of Microsoft and not maybe loving is maybe not the word that would come up, but you not sure where that came from for you in working with your teams that you realize it really is loving your team. How did you come up with the actual love?
Yeah, that's a really good question. In July of 2021, I was doing a keynote at a sales conference, and it was about the hybrid world of work and what it means for sales leaders. And at that time, 4 million people a month were leaving their jobs. And so, of course, one of the aspects I talked about was retaining talent. And when I was putting together that slide, I thought, okay, care for your team, support your team. And what was authentic to me was to put love your team. And I said to the audience, I go, look, I am really nervous about using the word love in a business conference with sales leaders. And it's a weird word to use in that context in business. But I said, what I think is the true sentiment a leader needs to have with their team is to love them. And I've recognized within myself that that has been something that how I felt about my team members. And love doesn't always mean roses and walks on the beach. It's also meaning Brene Brown says, clarity is kind. It also means addressing performance issues and being straight up and clear. Because I've come over the years to realize that if someone's not working out for me, the job's likely not working out for them. And I've actually had people who I managed out of the business for performance reasons come back and thank me because they felt, oh, I needed that nudge to get going. And that was not the best situation for me.
Yeah.
So that's how I came about using the love word. And I pull from experiences across my 25 years of managing teams. And on the book, all of the people who wrote a blurb on my book have worked for me. And through the years, like as far back as like 2000, late 90s. And so it was meaningful to me to have people who experienced my leadership, my management style to endorse me on the book rather than, I don't know, pick some who's who in sales leadership. Because I thought this is more meaningful and personal, and it's a personal book.
That's great. That's wonderful. And in your conclusion, you talk about words mattering and you say the sticks and stones playground rhyme is wrong. Words can hurt. And in terms of a business, they can create a culture of selfishness, distrust, dishonesty, retaliation, and dysfunction, a culture of quit. I've been around so many organizations like that over the years. And I've seen managers just write off someone on their team saying they're not doing it. They're not doing what I asked, so I'm not going to help them anymore. And people who are surprised when they're let go, like you shouldn't ever be surprised to know that you're not meeting expectations with your bosses. And yet we've seen that happen. Certainly seen it lately with the downsizing in technology. I feel so strongly about words. I actually do a mastermind class called Word Power for Sales. And we talk about every step of the sales or the buying process. And words really do matter. And the things that your leader tells you can affect you the rest of your life or your sales manager, right?
Yeah, you have said so much in those few sentences. I firmly believe you've got to be straight up and clear and just, okay, here's the gap. Here's what I'm expecting. Here's the behavior and the outcome I'm seeing, the results I'm seeing. And that's not measuring up for somebody at your level and your job role. The other thing too is I firmly believe you've got to give people an opportunity to change. If you're really going to live by having a growth mindset, and that's a value at Microsoft, then you've got to give people the opportunity to actually change, adopt new practices. It may not happen very often. In fact, I would say does not happen often in my experience that people can step up and change, but I have had it happen. And I have to tell you, people who have worked their way through a performance improvement plan and gotten to the other side of it and demonstrated success and results are really appreciative. And they're like, I don't know, just like you gotta be open-minded, in my opinion, that folks can change while at the same time you're holding them accountable and specifying what the gap is. And yeah, it's a lot of work, but that's what the manager's job is.
Yeah. Yeah. No one said it would be easy. When people say, I don't have time to coach, it's just amazing to me. But it's another conversation for another day.
Well, I should say though, I've done the math, and what I propose in the book and the time management, the schedule, it's about 15% of a manager's time. And that's like a team of 12 people with meeting with them every other week. And so if you're not coaching your team and engaging with your team, and let's say it takes you 20% of your time, so what are you doing if you're not doing that?
Yeah. And I've talked to managers who say we hired people who know what to do and one needs coaching. Even we use athletes as an example, right? The Tom Brady's of the world. The most elite athletes need coaching. And it just seems so clear to me that when someone says they don't have time for it, it's surprising.
Yeah, for sure. It's the other thing is the world is changing so rapidly. How can anybody know everything and stay up with it? And managers have a perspective, an advantage point that their sellers don't have.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want everyone to read the book and then post a review because that'll help Helen. That'll be great. And also, I want to switch gears a little bit because this is Conversations with Women in Sales podcast. We have both men and women that listen. We appreciate that very much. We have a lot of male allies. And yet women in technology sales are underrepresented at every level. Do you have any tips or suggestions? Certainly being a leader using the conversations in your book, I think would definitely help because we know that women will come into a company quite often, but a lot of times they'll leave because they don't feel like they're heard. They don't feel like their opinion matters. They don't feel like they're making the same pay. A lot of different reasons. Any thoughts that come to your mind about that?
Yeah, it's got to be an intentional focus to recruit and retain underrepresented minorities or women in this case, and women, not or, and women. It's a fact that the pandemic hit women harder, disproportionately harder. More women left the workforce because they tend to be caregivers, either of children or of elderly parents. That's just a fact. And they're not necessarily coming back to the workforce in droves because they've either figured out they can do things on their own terms in a more flexible way, or they may have come back to the workforce. But I was just reading some statistics. It was a McKinsey report, I think done with LinkedIn, and women, more often than not, other people are taking credit for women's work. Women are assumed to be a lower level than they actually are, as the pay disparity. They're getting burnt out and not recognized for some of the work that they are doing. So all those things are systemic challenges. And there's no magic bullet, but just intentional focus. We at Microsoft can't hire for a new position unless we have a diverse slate. And so that's a requirement. Now, that is not a check the box item. You've got to find legitimately qualified candidates and find candidates where they gather, whether it's women's organizations or whatever.
And that takes work. It's harder.
It does.
It's harder. It takes longer too. So I was curious. I was just thinking about proximity bias, about the fact that if I'm a woman and I'm not going to come into the office anymore, I'm going to work from my home office. But some of the guys are coming in. There's this idea that there's proximity bias, that they're going to have coffee with the leaders and they're going to go out for drinks after. And I'm not, and that's going to deter me from rising through the organization. Do you think that will happen, or have you seen that?
I think that men don't want to come into the office either.
Oh,
That, yeah. So I think the idea of requiring people to come into the office is an old idea that's not going to fly, because men as well want flexibility of where they work, when they work, etc. And also, companies are now competing with every organization on the planet for talent, not just in the industry or geographical proximity. You can see that those that come into the office, there may be proximity bias. We're all humans, and I can envision that could happen. But I also equally believe that men don't want to have to commute either. So I think we haven't seen the end of all of this work from home and how it will actually settle out. The other thing, too, is customers aren't coming into the office. So the idea that you hire salespeople to be co-located near their customer
right.
is also an old idea.
Yes.
And so we're seeing actually these meetings that happen maybe periodically, let's say quarterly, where people fly in for an executive briefing, or maybe it's in conjunction with the industry conference. There's customer meetings where the day-to-day happens more virtually. That's more what I'm seeing.
Yeah, that's great. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you today. And I'm going to be telling everyone about this book, Love Your Team, A Survival Guide for Sales Managers in a Hybrid World. Can people reach out, connect with you on LinkedIn, Helen?
Yes, absolutely. I would love that.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. And we'll be watching if you're doing any podcasts, or you do have a podcast, right?
I do have a podcast. I have not decided if I'm going to continue with it or exactly what I'm doing. I've been thinking through some other things that I might do. And so stay tuned on that one.
All right. We'll be watching to see what's next for you. Thank you so much, Helen Fanucci, and continued success on the book.
Thank you, Lori. I so appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Conversations with Women in Sales. You can find all of our episodes at womensalespros.com/podcast. Help us spread the word, and let's change the face of B2B sales.